Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right, everybody. Mike Alexander here with you, and also with me is Jonathan Wilson, our editor of the Taxpayer Gazette. How are you tonight, Jonathan?
Doing good. Happy Memorial Day weekend.
All right. Well, Memorial Day weekend is one that we observe here, and boy, talk about a tough audience. It is Memorial Day weekend. People are gone. People are driving. People are on vacation. And the only good news is that I think that Cavalier Celtic game is over now, or almost over, but I couldn't believe we were going to be up against that. But in any event, we'll have a few remarks to make on this Memorial Day. We'll have it towards the end of the program. Meanwhile, we have a great program set up for you. This is one of two election specials that we're doing. Tonight we're going to have, starting off, Jack Guerrero, who is the Republican candidate for treasurer here in the United States. He's currently a councilman in Cudahy, California, right next to my hometown, Huntington Park. We will follow on that with Tom Palzer. Tom Palzer is a Republican candidate for senator, along with about 50 other guys who are running in the primary. But Tom has a unique claim to fame. He has been out there pushing for quite a while an initiative to repeal the top two, which is one of our top problems here in the state. When we say top two, we're talking about the effects of Proposition 14, which was passed several years ago mistakenly by California voters, as a result of which we have the top two vote getters are the ones that go on the ballot. In some cases, that ends up being two Democrats, even rarely two Republicans, but you don't get much choice in that. In the 9 o'clock hour, we have somebody who may be unfamiliar to you, but his name is Bruce Whitaker. And Bruce is a candidate for in the recall election down in Senate District 29 in Fullerton. Fullerton used to be a very reliably conservative and Republican district, but the city of Josh Newman got in there, and the reason that they're recalling him is because he and 79 other idiots voted for that gas tax, which increased the amount of gas and registration fees that the average family of four pays by $750 a year. Now, that's not the total. That was just the increase. And, of course, we have right now a an initiative which has been submitted to the various registrars of voters throughout the state of California, and it's almost assuredly going to be on the ballot in November. So all of us will have an opportunity to repeal that heinous tax, but in the meanwhile, you can also repeal the people who did it, so to speak, and that one of them would be Josh Newman down there. So Bruce Whitaker will be on with us. And then in the 9 to 9:30 hour, we will have Steve Frank. Steve Frank is the editor of the California News and Political Review. We'll give you his website here a little bit later. So we're going to have a nice little group of candidates here tonight. And a lot of them are candidates where it's easy to get lost and hard for them to be heard. We have some excellent people that can't get heard, but we're going to talk to them, and we'll talk to them California Taxpayer Union style. I don't know how much time we're going to have for calls, but feel free to call anyway, and that number is 866-870-5752. And, of course, you can go to our website, radiofreelosangeles.net. That's all spelled out, radiofreelosangeles.net. Remember, this is citizen-sponsored talk radio. We need you to do your part out there as we do our part here at the station on Sunday nights. We come in here because it's important. Remember, California matters. We are here just a few weeks ago, California moved ahead of Great Britain, and now by itself, it has the 5th largest gross domestic product in the world. What happens in California matters. There's just no question about it. And nothing matters more than the people who will be running the finances of this state. And one of the most important offices in the state is that of state treasurer. And we now have on our line Jack Guerrero from Cudahy, California. Are you there, Jack?
A real pleasure to be on your show, Mr. Alexander.
Well, please make it Mike, if you don't mind me calling you Jack.
Of course.
All right. Jack, first of all, you're candidate for state treasurer. There are, about 3 or 4 people running for treasurer on the primary ballot?
5 candidates total.
Yes.
There are 2 Republicans. I'm the conservative alternative of the lot.
Yes.
And I'm very excited about my candidacy and grateful for the opportunity to share a little bit about my positions.
Sounds good. First of all, you are currently a councilman in a very small city in Southern California called Cudahy. But there are not many of us who know where Cudahy is. I do. Would you be kind enough to tell the audience where Cudahy is and your
Certainly.
Connections with that city?
Certainly. I was born and raised in the city of Cudahy, which is about 10 miles southeast of downtown Los Angeles. It's the second smallest city in Los Angeles County geographically. Demographically, it's about 96% Hispanic and about 80% Democratic. And it's part of a region that has been historically plagued with a lot of problems, as you recall, Mike.
Yes.
The neighboring city of Bell, people will recognize the city of Bell, was the infamous location of corruption on steroids. Back in 2010, the city manager in that community was paying himself $1.5 million a year in a town where the average income is $35,000, a disgusting violation of the public trust. My own city in 2012 had a very similar episode of corruption. The dollar signs were a little bit smaller, but the conduct was no less egregious. And it's against that backdrop that in 2013 I decided to run for city council as a government reformer.
And you did, and you won down there. And I remember talking to you. I think the first time you and I met was at a Republican convention here locally.
That's right.
In 2010, we got together and had a pretty good meeting. We were talking about those issues. Now, you have a good educational background too. You grew up in in Cudahy. Did you graduate from where? Bell High?
That's right. I was student body president of Bell High School, which was our local school. And after Bell High School, I went to Stanford University in the Bay Area. I studied economics. And I also have a degree from Harvard University, an MBA with a focus on corporate financial management.
Right.
I graduated in 2004 and then went on to finance careers on Wall Street and in other locations around the world.
Yeah, now your day job still includes finance, as I recall. Is that correct?
That's right. I'm vice president of a large U.S. subsidiary of a global organization, a global bank, and I dedicate my work to treasury functions. I evaluate capital actions for the bank, and I also perform economic stress tests, which are required by the Federal Reserve Board for the largest banking institutions.
Yeah, well, they ought to do a stress test on these cities. I don't know if you've been
No
following our work, but I'll tell you. I want to keep the focus on you for a second. I'll go back and talk about your city. So you're one of those guys who paid back. You didn't leave. Your folks, as I recall, still live in Cudahy.
Yes,
that's
right.
where you grew up. And of course, I'm always happy and proud to say that Huntington Park is my hometown. I liked Huntington Park. I lived there up until the early 80s. It's very, very nice communities around there, very stable. But they've had their challenges as the old industrial employment base has deteriorated, and many of those jobs have left. And, of course, nobody suffered more from immigration, mostly illegal, than Cudahy and Huntington Park. By the way, are you guys a sanctuary city over there?
Yes, the city council voted several years ago to declare itself a sanctuary city. I was the only dissenting vote for a lot of reasons, primarily because it was a gesture that had no teeth to it.
Right.
We contract police services with the LA County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
And I abstained, and get this, Mike, for abstaining. During my re-election campaign in 2017, I was called a white supremacist, and I was branded with every extremist, descriptor you can imagine.
Yeah, you don't look that white
campaign.
to me.
Certainly. But I can tell you, Mike, by the
Hey,
way, that
if you hear that music, Jack, that's our ad coming up. We're with Jack Guerrero, Republican candidate for California Treasurer. Call in at 866-870-5752. Glad you're aboard. We'll be back with Jack after this break. All right, this is Mike Alexander, and we have been speaking with Jack Guerrero from Cudahy, who is one of the conservative Republican candidate for Treasurer of the State of California. Jack, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
All right, Jack, tell our audience why white treasurer is so important, and related, if you would, to the top 2 or 3 problems that we have in the state of California, and how you could use the office of treasurer to help address those problems.
Certainly, Mike. We've got a lot of problems on our hand as it relates to the financial condition of the state, and the treasurer is uniquely positioned to address these problems. The first that I need to highlight is the pension crisis in this state. We have a tsunami on our hands that is getting completely out of control. To give you some numeric context, the Stanford University Economics Research Institute, and I graduated from Stanford, so I ascribe some credibility to this study, pegs the amount of the unfunded liability at $900 billion.
Yeah, and that's just the 3 major plans.
Yes, that's the combined unfunded liability for CalPERS, CalSTRS, and the University of California pension system.
Right.
And so when you add those all up, that unfunded liability of $900 billion, almost $1 trillion, compares, just for your viewers to know, to the general fund's intake of revenue in the state of California of about $125 billion.
Yeah.
That means, Mike, that we would have to shut down government for 7 years straight just to cover the gap that exists today with respect to these unfunded pensions.
Right.
And that gap continues to accrue every day, by the way.
That's correct. Yeah, that would just get us even, maybe up through December 31st, 2016. That number is growing and pulsing as we speak. And we cover these issues. I know you're busy. You probably don't have a lot of time to listen in here. But we go over this stuff time after time, and it's huge, and it's going to shut this state down. Now, quick question to you, and you may or may not want to answer it, but do these pensions get paid out? And I know the Supreme Court's got to weigh in on it.
Yes.
But what's your best guess? Is that these things get adjusted downward in bankruptcy or some type of insolvency? What's your best guess?
Well, there's the legal avenue, certainly, which is going to face a lot of challenges from the public sector unions, which are very powerful in this state.
Yes.
They're going to challenge any effort under the law to renegotiate future unearned deferred compensation. However, there's also the cold economic reality that money doesn't grow on trees, the money's not going to fall from the sky, and we're just not going to be in an economic position to satisfy all of these promises. So, legal decision or no legal decision, there is a mathematical certainty that we will not be able to deliver on the promises that we have made.
Right.
So the solution, in part, is that we need to renegotiate all future unearned deferred compensation. This so-called California rule that a lot of California Democrats have been holding on to at the behest of the public sector unions has no long-term sustainability. I think that California rule needs to be thrown out the window immediately, and anything that relates to future unearned deferred compensation has to be on the table, and it has to be renegotiated. There is no other way to circumvent the impending tsunami that faces the state.
Totally with you, Jack. And is it not time that everybody face up to this fact and move all new hires, and to the extent that the Supreme Court lets us, all new dollars for old employees at a minimum, move them to a defined contribution, that is a 401k type plan, so we know that we're even with our employees, every 2 weeks or every pay period.
That's right. Absolutely. That is the long-term solution as it relates to future deferred compensation schemes. And the only way we're going to achieve that is if we get political courage at the local agency level. The state treasurer doesn't have the legislative authority to change those compensation programs,
right.
But the treasurer does sit on the board of CalPERS and CalSTRS and can influence the discount rate that is used as a basis for reporting to the world just how severe this unfunded pension liability is.
Right.
And so on day one, when I become treasurer of the state of California, I will push aggressively to reduce the discount rate from the unrealistic 7.5, which is currently migrating to 7%,
right.
down to something a little bit more realistic, like 5.5%, which is just above the historical rate of growth for GDP in this country.
Yeah.
If we migrate down to 5.5%, we start to get to a liability that's a little bit closer to what the Stanford Institute is promoting.
Right.
And by doing that, Mike, this is the first step in telling the truth to the California taxpayer.
Yes.
Enough of the lies and enough of putting a lipstick on a pig. The taxpayers deserve to know the truth, and that's the first step in incenting local agencies to do the right thing and renegotiate these contracts going forward.
Yeah, exactly. We've been hammering away as city councils to restate these obligations. In my view, they are quite free, in fact, under a fiduciary obligation, to put real numbers on their CAFRs, their comprehensive annual financial reports. And instead, they're carrying this phony number from CalPERS, which severely misstates the actual obligation, which then permits a lot of these cities under the influence of the public employee unions to pretend that they have a revenue surplus. And so they say, we collected some more taxes here, so our people have been waiting for wage increases, so forth and so on. What is your do you think that the city should be taking action independent of anything that the state does to fairly state these obligations?
Absolutely. We need to take action immediately as local city councils, as directors of local agencies, independent of what the state does. But it's helpful when the state promulgates to the world that we've got a severity that the local agencies need to pay attention to. And so a lot of this, Mike, I think will kick off in earnest the moment the state tells the truth to the California taxpayer. Because right now that's not happening. With these unrealistic discount rates that are used to cloud the severity of the unfunded liability, a lot of taxpayers are being misled into thinking that the system is a lot more solvent than it really is.
That's correct.
The moment we tell the truth, it begins with the truth, like with most other public policy matters, to be able to initiate the appropriate reforms with respect to public policy.
Totally with you. And the fact is that these cities and these obligations, I would emphasize to everybody listening out here, these obligations, or I should say the pension benefits are calculated based upon contractual agreements made at the municipal level. So ultimately, these obligations belong to the cities, not to the state. Cumulatively, they're quite large, but they result in my view, a fraud on their creditors, a fraud on the taxpayers, and really a fraud on the employees, many of whom don't understand what you and I understand about this. That is, they're not going to get paid.
That's right, and I should emphasize, Mike, that the bad guy in this entire scheme is not the retiree. In fact, I consider the employee and the retiree a victim of this problem because they have been promised deliverables that will not come through, and that I think is very unfair. It's a shame. I think we're all victims in this, not the least of which the taxpayers who have to foot the bill. One other important point on this matter, Mike, is that the pernicious consequences of not telling the truth expand beyond our ability to pay these liabilities. They also affect our credit rating, because when we behave ourselves irresponsibly as a state, we start to have credit ratings that are relatively unattractive compared to other states. At the moment, only 4 other states have a worse credit rating than the state of California, and one of those states, Illinois, is just about to fall apart, largely for the same issues that are now on our radar. And so we need to get that credit rating under control. When we have relatively unattractive credit ratings, that means that the cost to funding in this state becomes a lot more severe. And that could translate into hundreds of millions of dollars in extra funding costs to pay for those bonds that the California legislators are so keen on.
That's right.
And so credit ratings are a big deal as well.
Jack, we've got maybe 3-4 more minutes. Kevin, how many more minutes we got? Oh, okay, we got 4 minutes. You've got some other issues. Jump to a couple of those. You're a great candidate. Sure. Tell us some other things that voters need to know.
Sure. The state treasurer's office is also responsible for transacting all of the bond issuances in the state. And at the moment, we've got about $25 billion in bonds that have been authorized and have not yet been issued. And so the new incumbent or the new treasurer that will come into the state's position will be responsible for transacting on this amount of bond issuances. I can tell you, as a Wall Street banker at one point in my life, as somebody who's worked in finance over 20 years collectively, that a lot of Wall Street bankers are taking advantage of the California taxpayer when it comes to the issuances of these bonds.
Oh, yeah.
And so we need a treasurer who is going to reel in that misconduct, in my opinion, and is going to put a stop to this abusive behavior by Wall Street bankers who overcharge us and collect a lot of fees associated with these issuances. And so the treasurer has to be responsible for that.
Totally with you.
One other issue that I think the taxpayer should be mindful of is that in the state of California, a lot of local agencies pool their unused cash into investment funds that the state treasurer's office manages. One is called the LAIF, the Local Agency Investment Fund, and those returns are paltry and unacceptably low. I've got a few ideas about how we can increase that return by diversifying the types of investments, including potentially some investments related to local agencies that we can work with within the state.
Very
but
interesting.
These are all examples of the kinds of issues that are affecting the financial condition of the state and the types of tasks that the state treasurer's office is responsible for.
Absolutely. You know, I can hear a lot of voters' eyes glazing over as you talk about this. We end up talking about this a lot. And as I say, my greatest fear is that I end up sounding like an angry accountant. And maybe Jack does too. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the things that Jack is talking about, they are big. They are huge. And you've got the state of Illinois that doesn't get as much attention as it should, and it's failing. We can go that route too, can't we, Jack?
That's right. Illinois is a bellwether for financial mismanagement on steroids, and we're just a few steps away from that situation. It's really important that the people of California elect responsible legislators and responsible individuals to some of these positions, like the state treasurer's office or the state controller's office, that directly relate to the financial condition of the state. This is the only way we're going to be able to stem this impending tsunami that is headed our way.
You got it from your lips from your lips to the voters' ears. We've had the pleasure of having Jack Guerrero here on our program, Radio Free Los Angeles. It is a delight to have you on. I hope the next time we talk to you, you're treasurer. You'll be the nominee. We'll have plenty of time to have you back on. Your analysis is really, really important. And once again, it's Jack Guerrero, Guerrero, from Cudahy, conservative Republican candidate for treasurer of the state of California. Give him your vote. Give him some support. What's your website, Jack?
You can find me at www.jackfortreasurer.com, and that's the number 4, the digit 4. Once again, jackfortreasurer.com.
You're the man. Go give him some love on that website. Jack, thank you so much for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had Jack Guerrero, a conservative candidate for Republican. He's been with us this last half hour. We will be back with you after the half-hour break. Call us at 866-870-5752.
Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right, back with you, everybody. Give us a holler here at 866-870-5752. Next up on our interview tonight will be Tom Palzer, candidate for U.S. Senator, Republican candidate. We don't have him on the line yet, but we do have Greg from Whitaker calling in. Greg, let's hear from you, my friend, and we'll, with your consent, I will switch over to Tom Palzer when he calls in, but love to hear from you. What's on your mind, Greg?
Okay, sir, it's actually Dave, and I want to show you guys. Now, in order to defeat this pension abuse in these cities all across California, people are going to have to learn how to be empowered, and I can show you. You're going to have to meet these unions on their own turf with their own methods, and that is called non-connected political action committee, started through the state of California rules and regulations. You file for that. And I can show you how to do that, Mike. I do not get paid to do this. I have a website, and I've learned these things over the years, and I show people these things for free. I am not a political consultant.
Yeah.
So it's called yourpoliticalwings.com. You guys, go spread this around. I can show you how to start a non-connected political action committee. These unions
these are called independent expenditure committees, correct?
Well, no, that's different. That's a person. No, that's a person who spends their own unlimited amount of money.
Yeah.
Any individual can do that. This is called state PACs. They're
okay.
Not connected. Yeah, and so what you do is go to Your Political Wings, contact me by email.
All right.
These you will be able to start what the equivalent of a union PAC, but it's not a union PAC. The union PACs are the PACs where they take the union dues and put it in these PACs they created. They're called union PACs, and they file through the state of California. They can do federal or they can do state. I'm talking about state. Therefore, you can do local. So what you do is you file a state PAC, like the unions, okay? But you are an independent person. You're not a candidate. You're virtually someone who's virtually campaigning in non-election years and election years.
Hey, Greg.
And you raise the money, and you raise the money, you put it in a PAC, and you spend the money for mailers.
Hey, Greg, I want to thank you for your input. We'll go to that website, and maybe we'll catch up on a future edition of Radio Free Los Angeles. I believe we now have Tom Palzer on the line, do we not? Are you there, Tom?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Tom Palzer. So delighted to have on you. Tom Palzer is a Republican candidate for senator among a field of must be around 30 or 35 people. Tom's great claim to fame and how he and I first met each other, he was working very hard for a while on a California initiative to repeal Top 2, which has really created a lot of political chaos here in the state of California. And he didn't get a lot of cooperation out of the Republican Party. That's a conversation perhaps for another day. But at this time, Tom is seeking the nomination for U.S. Senator. Why don't you tell us about your candidacy and what your issues are and your take on this whole business?
Sure. Let me give you a bit of background.
Sure.
I was a long-range planner for 32 years. Had 32 years of experience working with elected and appointed officials from City Hall to Congress. I've also worked with over 30 state and federal agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11. I served with the deputy director for the deputy. Let's see, got to get his title right. He was deputy director for the Port Authority, New York Port Authority, and also with the planners who worked on transportation in Chicago, St. Louis,
right,
L.A., and New York. And we also had transportation experts from Australia, Canada, the U.K., Japan, and Spain. And together we put a plan in motion for that could be deployed at any time by major cities. There was a transportation system management plan. It could also be deployed in countries that had terrorist threats and actions.
Tom, you obviously have management background. What do you believe are the top 2 or 3 issues in this year's California State Senate election?
Well, when you
Excuse
talk
me,
about the
U.S. Senator. Yeah.
Right, U.S. Senate. I mean,
Yes.
Mine are fully funding national defense and state and local law enforcement, restoring the rule of law while we seal our borders. We need to expand the economy, and what the president did with getting rid of 630 regulations has just really been fantastic for small businesses. We need to uphold the Second Amendment and life at conception. Those are a few things, and well, including ending sanctuary status of states and communities, and asking the communities join the amicus brief to reject SB 54. And, of course, repealing the top 2, we're going to give it another try in 2019.
Sure. And of course, not to put too fine a point on it, Trump certainly needs more reliable votes. He needs to increase his majority, not diminish it. We've got a lot of rhinos and practically left-wing Republicans in the Senate. He could certainly use another reliable vote when it comes to the upcoming Supreme Court vacancies. Trump's going to get at least 1, maybe 2 here over the next couple years. I mean, it looks like Kennedy's fixing to retire here, maybe at the end of this year's term. And then, of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she can't possibly be immortal. Something's going to happen. So, I don't know, but I don't think Ruth's as old as your opposition here, which is Dianne Feinstein. Yeah.
We got a question, Tom. We got a question from Facebook, Tom, from Dean Gross. And I know you just touched on it, but he wanted to know if how you're going to revive the Top 2 initiative for the 2020 election.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take what we've done in the past, and we're going to restructure it. We're also going to start during the summer. We started late during the winter, and we had Thanksgiving, we had Christmas, we had New Year's. We really didn't get going until February, and by that time, you only had 26 weeks, so 180 days. So it was just sort of tough. So that's the first thing we're going to do is restructure. We're going to make sure we have coordinators in every single county, and also several people working for each one. And we're going to get the word out a lot earlier, and we're probably going to find ourselves on every radio station, and we can get on, and that I think will make a tremendous difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think people are tired of the top 2. It was given to us as a system that would create, at least this is what we were told, more moderate or centrist candidates, from which to choose in general in this primary election.
Right.
In fact, in 2012, 14, and 16, the 3 races after it was enacted in 2011, more liberal incumbents retained their seats, and more liberal candidates won a plurality of races.
Yeah.
The Democrats don't even want this anymore.
Yeah, it seems ridiculous.
They're on record.
Yeah.
Are there any other states that do top 2?
Actually, Washington does top 2, and there were 5 states recently who tried to enact it, and that is, Illinois, San Diego, Alaska came close, but didn't make it. Virginia, Nevada, and Arizona.
Yeah.
None of them succeeded.
Right. It's a crazy system and gives us no competition here in the state at all.
Well, Dean on Facebook just replied to your answer, and he said, "Count me in, Senator."
Thanks, Dean.
So you've got 1 vote out there.
Yeah. Hey, we got.
I'll send us $5 to him.
Well, we've got about at 8:45. We'll have we got about 2 minutes right now before our break. What is your website, Tom? Where can they go to support you personally and financially?
www.tompalzer.com. TOMPALZER. TomPalzer.com.
Great. And who's, we know you got Feinstein up there. Who's the other leading competition on the Democrat side
Kevin De Leon.
Oh, that guy. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I can't keep track. That Kevin De Leon, he's truly nuts. And
problem there.
Yeah, that idiot. And this is certainly a slur on the mentally challenged, but that idiot was actually proposing that we set up here in California a statewide pension plan for everybody, right? Isn't bad enough they can't manage their state plan. He thought he'd get his hands on, he imagines himself Warren Buffett or some such thing. So
I doubt if he even comes close to a Warren Buffett. He's way out there, and a lot of people don't have a good taste in their mouths for this guy.
The guy's an idiot. So forth. So, and of course, Dianne Feinstein, as I put in our email tonight, time to call Forest Lawn. They're missing a customer. Call a hearse. She's done. Get her out of here. Her and Nancy. Maybe they can get a twofer out there, Forest Lawn, top and bottom there. So,
that would be fantastic.
Tom, thanks so much for coming on. It's tompalzer.com. Go to his website. Give him some love. We'll be back after a break. Join us at 866-870-5752. We'll be up with Bruce Whitaker next.
I should have her name.
I hope I wasn't clearing my throat into that microphone. I am so sorry. This is Mike Alexander, president of California Taxpayers Union, and the editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson, back with you for our first election night, well, not election night, but election recap special here.
This is great. We're getting some great candidates on tonight.
They are.
They have a lot of great ideas.
Yeah, and we're given the Facebook, those questions. It's hard when we are bringing the candidates on the telephone to field another question, patch them through. We don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
But if you got a question, tell them what to
absolutely. Facebook is if you have questions for any of these candidates, please visit our Facebook page. Just search on Facebook for Radio Free Los Angeles, and you'll see our Facebook live feed, and you can ask a question right there in the thread, and we'll try our best to answer it.
Sounds good. Now, next up, we have Bruce Whitaker, who is a candidate for State Senate District 29 down in Fullerton, and what they have going down there. Why don't we bring Bruce on? Are you there, Bruce?
Yes, it's great to be with you this evening, Mike.
Yes. By the way, I'm certain that we've met before. I think did you used to be on the council or live in Orange?
No, that's Fred Whitaker.
Fred, okay. All right.
I'm council member and twice mayor in Fullerton.
Yeah.
City of Fullerton.
Perfect. Well, Bruce, it's a delight to meet you. And why don't you give us the lowdown on what's going on down there in California State Senate District 29, why it's an important race, and tell us about yourself.
Well, speaking for Fullerton, we'd like to correct the error which occurred when local voters, elected Josh Newman to the state Senate. He's from Fullerton, of course. Prior to that, he was from the Bay Area. He spent 4 years in the San Francisco mayor's office.
Oh, geez.
And he's brought that kind of philosophy to this district, and it's not a good fit. So when the recall happened a little over a year ago, I was very early to throw my hat in the ring. I was serving as mayor last year. The recall should have been completed by November of last year. But this supermajority in the legislature was able to drag it out all the way to this June primary. So I'm looking very forward to it. We're getting close to the big night, and we've been working hard to line up my support for the race.
Now, what Josh Newman. What this guy did, as I understand it, he was one of the 80 legislators who voted to approve this gas tax. I mean, I know he's done or failed to do many other things, but this was his real mortal sin, and this apparently is what got everybody's attention. Am I correct on that, or has there been...
Yes, the SB1 transportation taxes were what triggered the voters' ire
Yes.
back against Senator Newman. He was effectively the swing vote on that in the Senate.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he'll swing electorally here from the gallows. Get rid of this guy. Of all the, why don't they leave the Bay Area up there? I mean, they're at home. It's just a petri dish of idiocy and corruption up there, and they feel like they've got to come south and start corrupting good cities, solid cities like Fullerton.
The progressivism is so over the top that it's bubbling over, and you're right, it seems to be drifting down to Southern California here more.
Yeah, it's amazing. Bruce, are there any other candidates to replace? I mean, the way that it works here in a recall is that there are basically two votes presented to the voter there in the 29th senatorial district. Vote number one is, do you vote to recall, get rid of, or retain this guy Josh Newman? Then second, who do you vote to put in? Is there more than one candidate to replace him, or are you the only candidate in that district?
No, there are six of us to replace. You're right. There's myself, and there are two other fellows from Orange County. They're both Democrats, Joshua Ferguson and Kevin Carr.
Right.
Neither have held office before. There are three candidates who are effectively from Los Angeles County. One is a former council member in Cerritos. His name is Joseph Cho. He's relocated in Buena Park for purposes of this race. There's George Shen, who has relocated to City of Industry. There's a small slice of City of Industry. And there's Ling Ling Chang, who's Diamond Bar.
Got it. And you're maybe the only guy that is on the other side of this question who's competing for to replace him. You're about the only guy who's been in that neighborhood, in that community, for the long term. Is that correct?
It's true. And
Good.
This district, the 29th district, almost three-quarters of it is North Orange County, which has been my territory for some time. I've worked as a staffer. I've worked at the County of Orange. I've been district director for a state assemblyman. So almost three-quarters is Orange County. There's about 19% of the district is Los Angeles County, and about 9% is San Bernardino County.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big area, and they gerrymandered those districts a long time ago, which is how we got this clown to start with. Now, once you get to be senator, you've got a lot of major issues facing you here in this state. We have the pension debt crisis, which is $1 trillion and growing. We had Jack Whitaker, conservative Republican, Jack Guerrero, conservative Republican candidate for treasurer, on to the early part of the show, who walked us through the big numbers, which we've been talking about for a long time. What is your position on that? How do you propose to address that?
Well, 14 years ago, a group that I started in Fullerton Association of Concerned Taxpayers, launched an internet effort, a website called the pensionsunami.com website. And we've been among the leaders nationwide in informing and staying abreast of the pension issue. It's clear that we need to move to a defined contribution type system, a way to remove the liability that residents and voters have for making up losses that occur with regularity from CalPERS, from their investment strategies.
Hear, hear.
And to ensure that then they're not going to break the bank. You know, a defined benefit system is fairly archaic now. It's time for those who will benefit from pensions to be able to assume some of the investment risk for those pensions. Just
your best guess, these obligations, the pension debt as we refer to it, may be as high as $1 trillion just for the three major plans: CalPERS, CalSTRS, that is the teachers' retirement system, and then the University of California retirement system. Just those three, which don't include many of the county's independent systems throughout the state. Just those three are almost $1 trillion. What's your best guess? These things get paid out or don't get paid out, or they have to be restructured somehow?
Well, speaking as a city council member right now, we're being forced into a very difficult situation. So many cities are going to be up against the bankruptcy line before we're done, because the costs, the expenses, pension-driven, are growing much faster than our revenue sources are. And with Governor Brown insisting on wasting money on his high-speed rail and otherwise state agencies being wasteful and needing to be streamlined, we are in a very difficult position, at least cities are. And what you're talking about, that $1 trillion, that's true on a market basis.
Right.
In my ballot statement, I spell that out, and I point out that for every resident in California, that's about $78,000
yes.
In debt.
That's right.
Owed.
Yeah,
so,
I'm sure you haven't had a chance to listen to us, but we've been hammering away at this for months now here on Radio Free Los Angeles, so I'm delighted that you're doing it. Another major issue facing California, the abysmal state of its public schools. We here openly advocate for educational savings accounts, school choice, where parents could get up to $10,000 a year to take their children, educate them at a school of their choice, including an accredited parochial school. What's your view on public education in this state?
Well, I've long been a supporter of vouchers or scholarships to allow parents whose children would otherwise be locked in abysmal schools the opportunity to make a choice, to be consumers, and be able to make a choice and use some of their tax dollars in a direction of their choosing. So my goal would be to push policies that would empower parents and really make the students front and center, and not the teachers' unions. Totally with you.
Now, Bruce, what is your website down there for people who want to find out more about you and, most importantly, contribute to your success down there? What's that website?
Well, thank you. It's www.brucewhitaker, that's BruceWhitaker.com. So www.brucewhitaker.com.
Fantastic. Bruce, we wish you the very best. And no matter what happens in this outcome, we would look forward to being in touch with you. As you know, we here at the California Taxpayers Union are dedicated to achieving reform in all these areas and fighting back against the fiscal insanity that is California, and working harder for free men, free markets, particularly in the area of education. Kevin, how much longer do we have here? Yeah, we got about a minute and a half.
Got another question from Facebook.
Sure.
For Bruce. Who are the top? Who are your top endorsers?
Well, State Senator John Moorlach, I'm very proud to have his strong support in this race. Also, Mayor of Anaheim, Tom Tate. So about 60% of Anaheim is in this district as well.
Interesting. The very, very important city out there. Any other questions off of Facebook?
Not for now.
Hey,
we've got a comment. Strong candidate needs our support.
Hey, you got it. Hey, once again, we've had Bruce Whitaker, candidate in the recall campaign against Josh Newman in California State Senatorial District 29 in Fullerton. So vote to get rid of that idiot Josh Newman. Vote yes for Bruce Whitaker. Bruce, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Take care. Mike Alexander and Jonathan Wilson will be back with you after the hour's break and the news at the top of the hour.
So here during Radio Free Los Angeles, David James just stepping in here to give you an update as to where we are. And it's great news. We are literally 39 families away from having every one of these 200 persecuted Christian families funded for an opportunity for them to have blankets and mattresses and coats and hygiene kit, medicine, a heater. It's going to happen this week. The effects of that genocide on a widow and her children, her husband and father of her children being killed because he wouldn't give up the name of Christ, which, by the way, ISIS did kill a majority of the men there. The women had to flee, had everything stolen away from them. They're returning back to their village to nothing. Except, that's where Christian Solidarity International is, to gift hope rekindled. Okay, so we're 39 families away. from having every one of these 200 families cared for. That's a $6,084 gift. Break that down to 12 months, $507 a month. Is there someone listening who says, you know what, I've got a car payment more than that. I can gift for 39 families, $507 for the next 12 months, $6,084. All 39 families that remain are gifted hope. Bottom line is, what's your best gift right now? $156 per family. Let's get 9 more families cared for. You ready? Maybe there's one of you become our next world changer, a $1,560 gift for 10 families. Okay, 888-253-3522, 888-253-3522. Click the banner at am870theanswer.com.
What's news in Southern California? We've got the answer.
The Gulf Coast is facing impacts as Tropical Storm Alberto nears with heavy rains, hazardous storm surge. Weather officials say the first named storm of the 2018 hurricane season intensified today off the west coast of Florida. Affected areas could also include eastern Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, western Tennessee, and the western Florida Panhandle. Spygate came up several times today on Sunday TV talk shows. On ABC's This Week, Congressman Tom Schiff says there was no spy in President Trump's 2016 campaign.
There is no evidence to support that spy theory. This is just a piece of propaganda the president wants to put out and repeat.
Schiff says President Trump made up the story about the spy. The president continues to maintain Americans will soon see that this is one of the worst scandals in American history. Southland weather, scattered fog and low clouds overnight, mostly sunny tomorrow afternoon. Mid-60s to around 70 at the beaches, mid to upper 70s inland. Right now, 67 in Pasadena and 65 in Yorba Linda. I'm Alan Ross, AM 870, The Answer.
How many more washes does your washing machine have left? How many more hot showers will you enjoy from your water heater? How many warm nights will you get from your furnace? How long before any of your systems and appliances die? Leaving you with a huge bill homeowners insurance won't cover. Be sure your budget's protected with an American Home Shield home warranty. We help cover the cost to repair or replace major components of up to 21 home systems and appliances, no matter their age, even your air conditioner, electrical system, and plumbing. For a free quote on flexible plans to meet your needs and budget, call 1-800-900-7115. All home systems and appliances die. Be sure your budget's protected. Be sure with the Shield. American Home Shield. For a free quote, call 1-800-900-7115. 1-800-900-7115.
Limitations and exclusions apply. See plan for details.
Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and Editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right, back with you, Mike Alexander and Jonathan Wilson, editor of the California Taxpayer Gazette. How are you tonight, Jonathan?
Doing great. This is a lot of fun talking to these guys tonight.
We've got some top people that are on fire. Jack Guerrero, Bruce Whitaker. I've never had a chance to talk with him. I mean, this guy is spot on. We need to run him for governor one of these times.
Yeah.
Any one of our people would do a better job than the rest. So we're on tonight on this Memorial Night, 866-870-5752. We've been speaking with candidates, and now in this last half hour of our show, 9 to 9:30 or shortly before, we have on Steve Frank. And Steve Frank is the editor-in-chief of the California News and Political Reviews. He has his website that we'll give to you later here. But now we're going to go over the ballot in general, mostly from a Los Angeles County perspective because we're so heavy here. We're going to do everything but the judicial nominations next week, or at least sometime during the week. We're going to record a segment with Craig Huey, who is a former candidate himself, who does a great job on judicial offices. Right now, I have the pleasure to introduce to you Steve Frank. Are you there, Steve?
I'm here. It's a wonderful day in California, and happy Memorial Day.
Yeah, right. Well, same to you here. You know, today's the day we remember all of those who have fallen before, and we'll do a little tribute here at the end. Many of you may be tuning in for our Government Grifter of the Week award, but tonight we're not going to do that because we have so much in the show, but at the end we'll do a little bit of a commentary. Steve, first of all, you've been kind enough to come on tonight. Nobody does more politics or talks more, writes more, or better about California politics than you do. Why don't you tell our audience, if you would, what your website is there, and they can go there and subscribe to your newsletter, which is required reading for me and anybody else who wants to know what's going on in our state.
Well, I put out the California Political News and Views 6 mornings a week at 3 a.m. That's 10 stories every morning, stories that are not properly reported, misreported, or not reported at all, things that the California public should know. I write for people from San Diego to Humboldt and the Oregon border, to let them know what's going on politically in Sacramento that affects them in Pasadena, in the San Gabriel Valley, and throughout California.
It's fantastic. And where do they go to subscribe? Give us your website.
They could go to capoliticalreview.com, capoliticalreview.com, and click on the California Political News and Views on the banner, and then just sign up for a free subscription.
Very good. I read mine every day. Although I subscribe my brother, and he reads it every day, but he swears that he's going to commit suicide one of these times. It's going to be your fault, because there's so much of the crazy stuff going on in California. He loves your.
Harry Truman said, "I don't give them hell. I just tell the truth, and they think it's hell."
They think it's hell, exactly. Hey, speaking about giving them hell, let's start at the top of the ballot recommendations. Let's start with governor. The leader seems. Who do you think is the leader right now? Is that Gavin Newsom there, the lieutenant governor?
Yes, I think Newsom is clearly the leader, and the fight is for second place.
Yes.
And under the Prop 14 rules, that if I was a betting person, and I'll tell you, audience, I bought a lottery ticket, but if I were a betting person, I would bet that Antonio Villagrosa will be number 2.
Yeah. How about in the Republic? We had on, we hope to have on next Sunday night, John Cox and so forth. Of the 2 Republican contenders, we have Travis Allen and John Cox. Which of these gentlemen is your preference?
Well, actually, I have endorsed neither of the candidates.
Okay.
I decided to stay out of that race. Both are well-meaning, well-intentioned, hard-driving candidates. Unfortunately, in my personal opinion, neither has had any traction. And in fact, John Cox, for instance, has had more campaigning done for him by Villagrosa and by Newsom than by his own people. And as best I could tell, and as you know, I work everywhere from San Diego to the Oregon border, John Cox doesn't have a ground game. He doesn't have ground support, as opposed to Travis Allen, who does have ground support a great deal throughout the state, but just hasn't been able to get his messages through.
Yeah.
And nobody seems to care that he's on the ballot.
Yeah, it is a problem. John Cox has managed to garner the Trump endorsement, however, and that seems to have pushed him a bit. Is that spin that we're hearing, or is he actually polling in second place or close to Villagrosa?
Well, let's talk about the polls for a moment.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of different polls, and they all have different methodology, and they all seem to be just weird results, not making any sense. and then when you put them against each other on the same days, the same type of polling shows very different views. I'm not sure the poll showed too much, but as far as the Trump endorsement has helped John Cox with the Trump people, but it has also helped the Travis Allen campaign, because the no-Trumpers now say, hey, if Cox is liked by Trump, we have to vote for Allen.
Right. I know it's hard to win. My own personal view is that either of those guys would be preferable to Gavin Newsom or to Villaraigosa. Let's move on to the lieutenant governorship here. Who's the leader in this race from your perspective?
Well, most interesting, there are two, in the Republican side, there are two candidates, Cole Harris of Pasadena, who's in over $2 million of his own money, and there's a lady from San Jose State, I believe her name is Lydia Ortega. I just watched one of her TV commercials, which is very well done, and she has done a very good grassroots campaign throughout the state. On the Democrat side, you have Ilani, and I can't even pronounce her last name, Kopolopoulos, something like that, whose father has put in $5 to $7 million in independent expenditure. He's a Sacramento developer. To get her the nomination, and then out of the San Gabriel Valley, you have State Senator Ed Hernandez, who is the choice of the Democrat establishment.
Right.
And I think it'll be Ilani and Ed Hernandez with a possibility of Cole Harris.
Yeah. Well, Cole Harris managed to get, we had him on last week, solid candidate, highly motivated guy, very candid, didn't duck any questions that we had for him. Both his heart and his mind seemed to be in the right spot, and he did manage to get the endorsement of the California Republican Party, which was unusual for them.
Well,
so,
in his case, he was the only candidate that qualified to ask for the nomination, because under the California Republican Party rules, needed to get 200 delegates divided among the 8 different regions of the state and a certain number of board members and to sign your petition, and he was the only one that was able to do that for lieutenant governor.
Okay, now moving on, once again, Cole Harris is the top guy, much more conservative, obviously, than either the Democrats. For my money, he's the go-to guy. Let's move on to Secretary of State, a very important office because of the control that it has over the elections. The Secretary of State is the ultimate supervisor in so many of these areas. We have Alex Padilla running for re-election. He's currently Secretary of State. In the Republican field, anybody that you like, especially, it looks like the only one we have is Mark Meuser, Meuser. What's your take on this guy?
Well, Mark, I've known for many years. He's out of Contra Costa County, up in the Bay Area. Very articulate, very knowledgeable about the workings of the Secretary of State. Then you have on the Democrat side, you have Alex Padilla, who absolutely refuses, excuse me, to look for voter corruption in the voting rolls.
Right.
He refuses to take off illegal aliens. He refuses to do a computer run comparing the election rolls to the DMV rolls of the 800,000 illegal aliens that have driver's licenses.
Hell, this guy won't even take dead people off of the rolls.
Excuse me?
This guy won't even take dead people off of the rolls.
Well, are you against dead people having time?
Oh, yeah, that. Hey, we're coming up on a break. We have Steve Frank, editor of California News and Political Views. If you have a question for any of us, call in at 866-870-5752 or go to radiofreelosangeles.net and click that Facebook link there and send in a question. We'll be back just a minute.
If you'd like to talk with Radio Free Los Angeles, the phone lines are wide open. 866-870-KRLA. That's 866-870-5752. We're live, local, and here to talk with you. 866-870-KRLA.
All right, Mike Alexander, Jonathan Wilson, back with you here. We have on the phone with us here tonight, Steve Frank, of California News and Political Review. I know that I mess that up every time, but Steve has been kind enough to share with us his observations about the candidate and most especially his recommendations. Where we left off, you and I were beating up on Alex Padilla over his management, or mismanagement to be more accurate, of the California voter roll. So he's a definite no on this guy. Anybody worth the nod from the Republican or conservative side here? Would that be Mark Muser, election law attorney?
Right. Mark is the only Republican running, and he's very qualified for the position. And he has been running literally for the last 9 months, going everywhere in the state. I see him in the north. I see him in the south. When I go to Fresno, I see him. I mean, he's active, and he has a really good shot for the November election as well.
Yes. Now we go on to controller, vote for one. I mean, we've got Betty Yee, who is the current California state controller, and we got somebody from Peace and Freedom, and then Konstantinos Roditis, entrepreneur. Sounds like another Greek we got going. What about Konstantinos? I'm not sure I know who he is, and I'm sure I've never met him.
I doubt if you've met him. I know I haven't. Almost nobody has met him.
Yes.
I'm told he's a decent person who wanted to try to run for office, and this is what he chose. But he hasn't any traction, hasn't raised any money, has no name ID, and no set of coalitions behind him. But he isn't Betty Yee,
right,
who is just a Bernie Sanders in a skirt.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So Konstantinos will be casting a vote for you. We go on to treasurer here in California. We had the great pleasure of having Jack Guerrero on here in our first half hour. Outstanding qualified candidate from my perspective. What say you?
Well, I've known Jack for several years as well. Good guy, well-intentioned, qualified for the position. He's articulate, knowledgeable, and experienced, and I think he would do very well in the job, and
yes.
I think he will make it to the November election.
Yes.
And I think the November election is going to be very different dynamic with no Republican running for governor, no Republican running for the U.S. Senate, but the gas repeal will be on the ballot,
yes,
and that's going to drive turnout.
It is. It is. So Jack Guerrero is our guy. Let's move on to Attorney General. We've got at least 3 Republicans two Republicans going up against Comrade Javier Becerra. Never was there a more radical, far-left, Marxist, Stalinist, flat-out nutcase than Javier Becerra. Who is your pick between the two? We got Steve Bailey, retired California judge, and Eric Early, who was in here earlier tonight for another show. Which one of these guys do you like?
Well, I've known Judge Bailey for about a year and a half now.
Mm-hmm.
I've known of him for several years. Since he was a teenager, he's been a fighter for the free markets and for limited government. He's eminently qualified to be Attorney General. Eric Early has not been involved too much in Republican politics over the years, and in fact, several of the people working for him are what we call no-Trumpers.
Yeah, very interesting. So your pick is Steve Bailey. By the way, what part of the state is he from?
Steve Bailey's from El Dorado County.
Got it. That's why I never heard of him. And this is a big state, by the way. When I made that comment, ladies and gentlemen, please don't regard that as a criticism or dismissive. It just reflects how large our state is geographically and numerically. It's very difficult to know who's going, who's who and who's done what. Moving on to Insurance Commissioner Steve Poizner has surfaced again. At one time ran as a Republican. Now he tells us that he has no party preference, running up against two or three other, Ricardo Lara, Democrat, Senator Natalie Freezy, public school teacher, Asif Mahmoud, a Democrat, whatever. What do you think about Steve?
Well, it should be noted that about a month ago there was a poll, and that poll showed him 31 points ahead of Ricardo Lara and the rest of the Democrat team. Now, Ricardo Lara, I did a story about him about a week ago, I believe. He's the Democrat state senator that has a bill to give free health care to all illegal aliens in the state of California.
Oh, perfect.
But if you were to ask him, and he comes from Linwood or Lakewood or somewhere down in that area, if you were to ask him, who does he represent? He will tell you he represents the undocumented.
Oh, there you go.
Not his constituents.
Perfect. Finally, some candor out of that party. And, of course, Steve Poizner used to be the insurance commissioner in California. He clearly knows the job, so it sounds like Steve Poizner gets the vote. Then we go to member of State Board of Equalization. I'm moving through our county ballot here in Los Angeles County, which is kind of the center point for most of our voting. And this everybody has in common. But we go all the way down, and I think that the only Republican for 3rd District is a guy named Rick Marshall, first initial G, named Rick Marshall. What do you know about Rick?
I've known Rick for between 25 and 30 years. He's out of the South Bay area, somewhere around Torrance. I forget the exact city. He's been a long time political activist.
Good.
He would be excellent for the Board of Equalization. He has been running hard in the district. And remember, there are 4 B of E districts. That means he would be representing somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 million people. And so it's a big district.
Hey, Steve, we're coming up towards the end of the program, and I want to run you through, if we could, the state measures, kind of rapid fire here. And the first one is Prop 68. I take it that all 5 of these were placed on the ballot by the state legislature. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. I thought we had, by the way, I thought we had a rule.
Without being put on there by the legislature.
Yeah. So we have first one authorizes bond funding. They want a bunch of more money for state parks. Proposition 68. Yes or no?
4.1 billion, 8 billion total. Absolutely not.
Right.
The state already has more than enough money. Why encourage them to steal more from the public?
Totally with you. Prop 69 requires that certain new transportation revenues be used for transportation purposes. This is a fraud, a hustle, and con. This should be no, correct?
Oh, absolutely. The way they have it worded makes you think it's for freeways and roads, but the way they have it worded, it could go to the choo-choo to nowhere and help finance that boondoggle.
Prop 70 requires legislative supermajority vote approving use of cap-and-trade reserve fund, legislative constitutional amendment. Yes or no?
No, because there's so many loopholes in it. Swiss cheese would look whole.
Gotcha. That was my impression as well. 71 seems to be fairly neutral. Sets effective date for ballot measures. that it will go into effect 5 days after the Secretary of State certifies the results of the election. And that usually means about 30 plus 5. Is that correct?
That's correct. And this is just a technical change.
That seems
makes no real difference, and I would vote yes on this.
Yes on 71. Last, Prop 72 permits legislature to exclude newly constructed rain capture systems from property tax reassessment requirements. I have no insight on this. Sounds to me like it's legit, but that's always dangerous when you're reading these summaries. What's your impression on that?
This is a very good one. Under state environmental laws, a lot of farms and other places have to do gutters and other rainwater retention systems. And once you do that, the value of your property goes up. And what this does, it stops the increased valuation of your property by following the environmental laws.
Steve, I want to thank you for having on. I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Hope you're feeling good. We're coming up on the end of the show. I want to thank Steve Frank once again for reviewing the top issues with us. We'll be ending here just a minute, but this is Memorial Day weekend. It's not a weekend which technically we celebrate or regard as happy. In fact, it's a somber weekend in which we remember all of those who have fallen. World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and every other conflict that we've had. And even today, men go in harm's way. They die. They're giving it all up. And by comparison to those sacrifices, writing a check, walking a precinct, advancing the cause of freedom here is a small price to pay. These men and many women and their families have paid this price and continue to pay them. This is Mike Alexander. We'll see you next Sunday night. Remember these men and their families in your prayers.